All right, so bats of Connecticut. As you'll see as we go along, a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about bats, and I hope to clear those up and let you understand just exactly what they are and how they do benefit us more than we know. Hold on, why is that not moving? Hold on, I got this little cursor thing. It's not working as a mouse. That's right. Hold on, I got something going on, Catherine, that's a little pencil, so I don't know what.
Yeah, I see it as well.
Let me see. Okay, I'll just use the keyboard. That's fine. So,
Mhm.
so bats are found on every continent except Antarctica in extreme deserts and polar regions. They're members of the order Chiroptera, which you can see down there, and I probably didn't pronounce it right, which means hand wing. And it's the second largest mammalian order. It has almost 1,400 bat species, or 20% of all mammals. So there's a lot of bats flying around, and you probably didn't know it. Areas of high bat diversity are concentrated around the equator. Migration has allowed bats to exploit geographic areas far away from their tropical origins. The US and Canada are home to about 45 species of bats, and additional species are also found in the US territories in the Pacific and Caribbean. From early spring to late fall, bats in North America are very busy trying to find their summer roost, having and raising their pups, which their young are called, hunting for insects, finding mates, and preparing for winter. They are nocturnal, which means they are active at night, and you've probably had some fly near your head sometime. During the day, bats do spend most of their time sleeping in their roosts, but once it starts getting dark, they become active and they will fly off in search of a meal. Why should we care about bats? Bats are cool. Hold on, I got to move this little strip here. Okay. Bats are cool and they are important to a healthy ecosystem. They're helpful to agriculture and forestry, and they are in trouble. They are very fascinating creatures that provide ecological services without which the health of our ecosystems would suffer significantly. They're estimated to be worth over $3 billion per year to U.S. agriculture. So that's in eating insects pretty much. So that's quite a significant contribution. Okay, why are we not changing? Okay, so bat navigation systems are called echolocation. They're believed to be ounce per ounce and watt per watt basis, billions of times more efficient than anything that humans have ever developed. Bats are night blind. We will talk about that, but they have highly sophisticated social systems, strikingly similar to those of the higher primates, elephants and dolphins, sharing information and food, and they'll even adopt orphans. They're quick learners with long memories. Frog-eating bats can identify frogs by their calls. They can learn new calls in just minutes and then remember them for at least 2 years without further repetition. Don't we wish that we could remember stuff like that? Many moths, as they're flying, listen for bat echolocation, and they flee when a bat is heard. But some bats simply rely on hunting frequencies that are too high or low for moths to hear, and they're able to nab those moths. The moths do fold their wings up and drop down and try to avoid the bats, and this has been somewhat successful for moths, I think. Bats can be long-lived. Some can live up to 41 years in the wild and still be able to chase down flying insects for dinner. The equivalent of a human living to be 100 years old and still able to hear well and run obstacle courses. Don't we wish we could? Bats, not birds or bees, are the world's most effective long-distance pollinators. A lot of people probably don't know that. Explaining why tropical plants often compete for their services. Medical science has also much to learn for bats, given that they are normally immune to such maladies as cancer and arthritis, as well as to a variety of other diseases. Because of their flexible wing membranes, bats are much more efficient and maneuverable flyers than birds or insects. So that's pretty cool, I think. Some of the world's cutest and most colorful mammals are bats. Like you'll look at this and say, really? I don't think so, but come on, that Chapin's free-tailed bat's pretty cute. Uh, while others are as strange as dinosaurs, as you see down there, the African hammerhead bat. Big brown bats and several other species have special adaptations that permit them to survive sub-freezing body temperatures during winter hibernation. All bats are good swimmers. Hold on a second, sorry. I think there's somebody in the waiting room. All bats are good swimmers using their wings as oars. Fishing bats can detect objects as fine as human hair on a pond surface and use huge flattened toes and claws to snatch minnows from the water. I'd kind of like to see that. Pallid bats are immune even to the deadliest stings of scorpions and centipedes, on which they actually eat them. We don't have these bats in our country, but I thought, since I'm telling you bats are cool, I should tell you about some of the worldwide cool bats. Many bats sing like birds during courtship, and this Chapin's free-tailed bat even have showy crests of white hairs, normally hidden, that can be spread like a peacock spreads its tails when looking for a mate. Free-tailed bats fly thousands of feet above the ground, and they rely on tailwinds to carry them long distances at nearly 100 miles per hour to reach feeding areas and to migrate. A mother free-tailed bat can find and identify her own newborn baby either by their voice or their odor, even when it is crammed in with 300 to 500 others per square foot. Imagine that, in clusters covering many square feet. My thing doesn't want to change. Sorry. There we go. The difference in size and shape are equally impressive with bats. Bats range in size from the Kit's hognose bat, also called the bumblebee bat, that weighs less than a penny, making it the world's smallest mammal, to the flying foxes, which can have a wingspan of up to 6 feet. Imagine that, a bat-like critter with 6 feet wingspan. And look at this little bat, the Kitty's hognose bat. It does have a very unique look. The fact that it's so tiny encourages the other name it's called by, the bumblebee bat. It's the smallest of all the species of bats that are in the world, is also one of the smallest mammals in the world. It does weigh less than 1/4 of an ounce. So that, imagine that, and it's approximately only 1 inch in length. Their ears are large when you consider the small size of the rest of the body. They do have a tail, but many people don't think so. However, it's just so tiny, it's hard to see. As seen in these pictures, a bumblebee bat can actually rest comfortably on your finger. They have long wings, and many people wonder how they are able to fly. They're only found in 2 countries, Thailand and Myanmar. They were only discovered in the early 1970s. So as a mammal species, they're relatively new as far as being discovered. So it is thought they might exist elsewhere, but they're so small, it's hard to say. Whereas most bats live and roost in the thousands, even tens of thousands, bumblebee bats live in roosts of only 10 to 500 bats, still pretty crowded by our standards. They also do not cluster close together when roosting, as do most bats. Their lifespan spans only 5 to 10 years. They do live in limestone caves near rivers, and they will migrate to the top of the caves for warmth. They are under legal protection in the countries they're in. They have a very short activity period. Every day they'll leave their cage for only 30 minutes in the evening and 20 minutes at dawn for foraging. But if you look at them, they can't hold much in those bellies, right? They normally fly along the top of bamboo trees and catch their prey, which are mostly insects and sometimes spiders in flight. They don't ever go more than a half mile from their caves. Human activities are beginning to endanger the habitats of the bumblebee bats, which is true of a lot of our animal habitats. Humans are encroaching. Ever since the discovery of these bats, tourists have been flocking there to these sites just to have a look at them. Furthermore, locals even have captured them to sell them as souvenirs. I remember in the State Fair of Texas, they used to have little lizards they sell, and people would pin them to their shirts. Furthermore, locals even other human activities include limestone extractions and deforestation, which do affect the life of these bats. It results in loss of habitat and a decrease in prey hunting activities for the bumblebee bats. And here is the flying fox bat, a fox that flies. Well, what's that in the sky? It's a bird, a plane? No, it's a flying fox. Look at that. Not quite. Picture an animal that has wide, leathery wings and a face that looks like a fox. So you can see they're kind of fox-like. And you'll understand what a flying fox bat looks like. The bat has a pointy nose, big eyes, and short ears sticking up over its head. Flying foxes are covered with dark fur and have long toes that are good for grabbing hold of tree branches, as you can see that there. They're the largest of all bats and are sometimes referred to as megabats. The body of this bat is about 1 foot long, and its wings can be 3 to 6 feet across, pretty large. Even though they are big, they only weigh a couple of pounds, which makes it easier for them to fly. They live in warm, wet places like rainforests. They can be found in rainforests of Australia as well. They do live in large social groups, as you kind of see them all clustered there together on the left, called colonies or camps, where hundreds or even thousands of flying foxes can be spotted hanging upside down from the tops of trees. Move over, Dracula, right? Flying foxes' wings act as kind of a built-in sleeping bag, as you can see up there in the top right. They wrap them around their body and help conserve body heat when hanging upside down to rest. They will talk to each other through chirps and calls, and they stay cool by fanning their wings and licking themselves. You might have heard that some bats use a type of radar to locate and capture flying insects, as the bats we have here in Connecticut. Flying fox bats don't have that ability because they are not insect eaters. They are a type of fruit bat, and they'd rather eat fruit, nectar, flowers, and pollen than bugs. Thus, they are also pollinators. They are nocturnal, which means they are active and feed at night, obviously, and they use their strong sense of smell and sight to locate their dinner. And they really are good pollinators. They spread pollen and seeds. Pollen picked up from the flowering plants they feed on falls off their fur as they fly, allowing it to spread. The flying fox also poops a lot, and the poop is dropped as they fly, which also allows seeds in the poop to get dispersed to different areas. So very important pollinators. Their wings are actually skin, as you can see, stretched between finger-like digits. Their delicate bones provide the frame for their flexible membrane, as you can see on the right there. Only their thumb is left free, which has a large claw, which is used for climbing and grooming. And you can see kind of their little sleeping bag over there on the left as they're sleeping. All bats have the same kind of bones in their wings that humans have in their arms and hands. Again, I love the little sleeping bag effect of them. You're making me dizzy. My head is reeling. Not. Why do bats hang upside down? People ask me a lot. And do they ever get dizzy? Hanging upside down has a few benefits for bats. They have special tendons in their feet that let them hang while being totally relaxed, so they aren't using much energy. It allows them to take off quickly in flight. Most bats are so small they probably don't get dizzy like we might, because gravity doesn't make as much blood rush to their head. Because of their unique physical abilities, they can safely roost in places where predators cannot get to them. And sometimes it's your attic. But to sleep, bats hang themselves upside down in a cave or hollow tree with their wings draped around their bodies like cloaks. They hang upside down to hibernate and even upon death. The same valves and muscles that keep blood from pooling to our feet are upside down in bats and keep blood from rushing to their heads. So as I've said, a lot of times, most of our animal critters are uniquely adapted to whatever lifestyle or whatever living conditions they have to live in. Sorry, I had to take a sip. And as I said, they are prolific pollinators. When bats feed on flowers, they do pick up and distribute pollen between plants. As you can see, the one on the left, that lesser long-nosed bat, that is pollen on that bat. So that bat's gonna spread that all around. When studied, one population was seen to visit over half of the tree species in its forest, with 79% of the canopy trees visited. So all kinds of plants. This huge diversity makes them a powerful contributor to our forest ecosystem, and not just because of the way they eat. When bats eat fruits, many of the seeds from the fruits pass through them unharmed, which makes their poop or guano another valuable resource for distributing seeds. Finally, the guano is very high in nutrients for plants too, so you can actually buy guano for fertilizer, and I've told it's a pretty good fertilizer. People sometimes often ask me, why do we need bats? Why are they good for people and Earth? They are amazing animals, as I said, that are important to health of our environment and people. Although we don't see them, sometimes they're hard at work all around the world each night, eating tons of insects, again, pollinating flowers and spreading seeds that grow new plants and trees. And believe it or not, many of the foods we like to eat depend on bats for pollination or pest control. Without bats, there might not be any chocolate or your morning coffee. Small but mighty, the lesser long-nosed bat is the unsung hero in maintaining fragile desert ecosystems. It's only about 3 inches long, and it has a brush-tipped tongue that's as long as its body, and it is the perfect pollinator. Every year it migrates from Mexico, and it follows what is called the nectar trail of blooming cacti and agave flowers to southern Arizona and New Mexico. And along the way, as it drinks the nectar of these plants, it does pick up pollen, spreading it from flower to flower, and it does get covered over, as you can see. So both the saguaro cactus and agave depend on this bat for pollination. When it was listed as endangered species in 1988, there were fewer than 1,000 of these in the country. Today, there are an estimated 200,000 at 75 roosts in the southwestern Mexico. A lot of this attributable to different protections that have been put in place. Thanks to a 3-decade-long conservation partnership, the bat was saved from extinction, and it was delisted in 2018, making the lesser long-nosed bat a conservation success story. So bats are also very prolific socialites. On the right is a cave in Texas, in the Texas Hill Country. And if you go there, go in the spring, because you'll see fields and fields of gorgeous blue bonnets and Indian paintbrush. It's a sight to see, but so are these millions and millions of bats that fly out of this bracken cave every night. Anyway, they are prolific socialites. Some colonies have tens of thousands of individuals in them. The gray-headed flying fox has an average colony size of 20,000 individuals. This is an impressive number of bats, and enough to block out the sunset when they all come out at once. But nothing, as I said, is compared to the largest bat colony in the world. Around 15 to 20 million, that's million free-tailed bats, come out of these caves in Texas at night. So it's quite the thing to see, quite the noise to see. Be careful if you look straight up, you might have something plop on you, but not generally speaking. Bad joke. The Mexican free-tailed bat is a subspecies of the Brazilian free-tailed bat that lives in the southern United States. There's over 100 million free-tailed bats in the United States. 2 of the largest populations are in Carlsbad Caverns and at Bracken Cave near San Antonio. As I said, every night from spring through autumn, the bats really wow visitors. You can't even imagine what it's like when they swarm out of the caves in a whirling funnel and going out to find water and food. So it's estimated that Carlsbad Caverns, that 4,000 bats eat about 3 tons of insects every night. And just imagine that. They're strong and fast flyers. They can fly up to 60 miles per hour. They often go 50 miles and as high as 10,000 feet in the air, which is why some of these hibernate will go to Mexico for the winter. So a lot of people from literature, movies, theater, we all think that these bats are coming to suck your blood. So vampire bats and mythological creatures termed vampires find prominence in both current and historical culture and folklore. This one folklorist, Stu Burns, indicated that the word vampire is derived from the early Slavic word upir, U-P-I-R, found in an 11th century Russian manuscript. The word was westernized to vampire with a Y, in the 18th century. The word vampire, as most of you probably know, refers to a corpse that has risen from the dead to drink the blood of the living. Stories of blood-feeding monsters are common among the world in many different cultures. Early doctors and researchers even blamed vampire attacks as the cause of various diseases such as anemia and the Black Plague. But how did the vampire come to be associated with bats? It's an interesting story. After early reports by New World explorers of blood-feeding bats, folklore surrounding vampires rapidly incorporated winged creatures of the night into these myths. The elusiveness, mystery, and nocturnal habits of both bats and these mythological creatures contribute largely to this folklore connection. Bats and vampirism were connected permanently upon the publication of Bram Stoker's classic novel, Dracula. And just a little aside, I like asides. Mark Twain, who wrote a lot of his books here in Connecticut, he helped Bram Stoker with the editing of Dracula. So kind of a little interesting side note. But why bats aren't as scary as you think? When we think of bats, an unfavorable image often comes to mind, whether it's the scary portrayal of them in vampire films and literature, or a general fear of how their real-life counterparts might transmit viruses. Bats have gotten a bad rap that's actually more fiction than fact. Take a look at how many common bat misconceptions came about and just how vital bats are to our everyday lives. But thanks to Bram Stoker's Dracula and other literature that demonizes bats, our impressions of this mammal are mostly creepy, and it's looking to bite and give you rabies. This is far from the truth, and as for them carrying rabies, less than 1% of bats have rabies. Hear a fluttering in the night. These are images that we see, bats are used for. Okay, you hear a fluttering in your bedroom in a dark night, tuck your head under the covers. It might be a bat come to suck your blood. Not. Only 3 of the 1,400 bat species in the world feed on hosts for blood, and they do not suck it, they slurp it. And all of these are in Latin and South America, and don't worry, they mostly prey on beasts such as livestock. Those 3 blood-feeding bats are called hematophagus, the common vampire bat, the hairy-legged vampire bat, and the white-winged vampire bat. Several other bat species with vampire in their names, such as the greater false vampire bat and the spectral bat, are actually carnivores that eat frogs, birds, and even other bats. And guess what? There are no vampire bats in Transylvania, just to set the record straight. So old world vampire folklore was well established before the discovery of these actual vampire bats. So these bats, as I said, they lap the blood, kind of like your kitten laps up milk. They use their razor sharp teeth to make a small incision in the skin and then proceed to lap up the blood like a kitten. Chemicals in their saliva prevent clotting, so the blood of their prey continues to flow freely. Some of these substances, cleverly referred to as Draculin, have been isolated from bat saliva and are being tested as potential remedies for stroke and heart attack victims. There's a lot of medical research on bats, and they're helping with some remedies. Unlike other bats, these bats can walk, jump, and catapult themselves into the air. I'd really like to watch them. They're really small, only 3.5 inches, wingspan 7 inches, and they weigh no more than 2 ounces, but that can double in one feeding. Their habit of feeding on blood, which at first appears repulsive, may actually help us solve, as I said, human problems with heart attacks and strokes, leading causes of death in humans. They discovered that these anti-clotting properties of vampire bat saliva hold promise for the development of new drugs to treat these disorders. Studies have also revealed that the proteins vampires use to prevent this clotting are 20 times more powerful than any known anti-clotting substance that humans have developed. In addition, the proteins are more specific in their action and appear to cause fewer side effects than the anti-clotting agents we use today. So again, despite what Hollywood movies would sometimes have us believe, the common vampire is a small bat that weighs less than 2 ounces, only about 4 inches, not around here, not going to suck your blood. Every aspect that when they feed on blood, every aspect is affected in their body. They do also feed on a variety of animals. They will sit on a cow. They'll sit on a sea lion, pelicans, horses, pigs. These animals are ideal victims because they're just kind of sitting around, a lot of them chewing their cud or their food, and then the bats just swoop in and take a slurp. So what should I do if I get a bat in my house? If a bat flies in your house, close all the doors that lead to other rooms, open the doors and windows that lead outside, turn the lights off, leave the room, and wait for the bat to get itself out and fly out, which it generally will do. As I said, less than 0.1% of wild bats have rabies. It must be sick with the disease to pass it to another animal via a bite. Bats with the disease become progressively paralyzed. The mere presence of bats does not pose a health hazard. I mean, if you find a dead bat, you see one on the ground, put on gloves, you can bag it up and get in touch with the Connecticut Health Department, and they'll tell you what to do with it. Rabies, again, is estimated to cause 59,000 human deaths annually in over 150 countries. 95% of those cases occur in Africa and Asia, and mostly third world countries. But there is widespread underreporting in these poor countries, so those estimates might be uncertain. It's probably a gross underestimate. 99% of rabies cases are from dogs. And the burden of the rabies disease is usually borne by rural populations, poor populations. Approximately half of the cases are children under 15. So pretty sobering to think about that. Sometimes a bat might go off course and accidentally find their way into your home. Again, as I said, it's not cause for alarm. Stay calm and follow these steps to remove them safely and humanely. Again, it might fly around the room. It will want to land on curtains. Remain calm and keep pets and children away. The bat tends to fly in a U-shaped path, which means it'll fly higher when it's near the walls and lower when it's in the center of the room. So you stay near a wall. Again, close all the interior doors, give the bat a way to get outside. If it doesn't exit on its own, it's best to wait until they land to try to catch them. And don't try to hit a bat with a bat. You're not going to be very successful. Never try to handle a bat. You need to have, with your bare hands, you need to wear thick gloves, not cotton. They can bite through cotton. And when I'm talking about cotton, a lot of times, if you ever have to rescue an owl that's been hit on the road or whatever and take it to a rehabilitator, or any animal with talons or claws, don't use towels because their talons or claws can get caught in the in those little threads. Always use some softer sort of thing. Anyway, so when you're trying to get a bat, wear gloves. If gloves aren't available, you can roll a t-shirt up over your hands and grab it. Make sure there's enough thickness, obviously, to the material. Bats most likely will land somewhere where they can hang, so oftentimes behind curtains or upholstered furniture, hanging clothes maybe that you're hanging off of your bicycle that you don't use. But and then carefully get like a plastic tub or similar container and place it over them, then work like a piece of cardboard or stiff paper under the container, trapping the bat, and then take it outside. Because most bats can't take flight from the ground, tilt the container a little to allow the bat to climb a tree trunk. It's not going to go flying over into you, don't worry, or other vertical surface. But this is something to note. If there's a possibility that a bat has bitten someone, like say you're sleeping, you wake up, you slept all night, you see a bat in your room, their bites are tiny, you probably won't see it or feel it. You should call your local animal control agency and they'll give you numbers to call. Then try to figure out how it got in. It may have been roosting somewhere in your house, like your attic, as you can see in this diagram below. These are favorite entryways, not only for bats, but other animals like squirrels and stuff. So it's really would behoove you to try to fill up any holes that give entrances to your house, because that'll keep all these critters out. The common entry parts are gaps and openings that lead to attics or roofs. You know, the little vents up at the top of your attic, where they have louvers. If you put screen over there, that'll help. So it's better to seal all this stuff if you can. Again, bats are furred, warm-blooded mammals. They have body lengths up to 3 to 6 inches long, and wingspans, again, can range from 8 to 16 inches. They have good eyesight. They rely on vision for long-distance orientation, short-distance navigation. For catching food at night, again, is echolocation. And again, it is like a sonar system. It's similar to what dolphins use to locate targets and background objects from the echoes that come off these ultrasonic sounds. They're given very slowly when a bat is foraging and quicken as the bat pursues and gets nearer to the insect. Detection, pursuit, and capture of an insect can take about 1 second, so they're very quick. Night insects have the most to fear from bats, obviously. Each gnat bats can eat their body weight or more in insects, which can number in the thousands. So that's a lot of insects. And because they eat so many insects, which have exoskeletons made of this shiny material that's called chitin, C-H-I-T-I-N, some bat poop sparkles. So there you go. That's pretty amazing. Cool but weird fact, we know. This insect-heavy diet does help foresters and farmers protect their crops from pests. As I said, saves U.S. farmers over $3 billion a year. They have few natural predators. Disease is their biggest, although owls, hawks, and snakes do eat bats. But that's nothing compared to the millions of bats that have died from the white nose syndrome, which we will talk about. Again, bats are night critters. They might be small, but they're fast. They can go up to speeds, as I said, over 100 miles per hour. There are 9 species of bats in Connecticut. Not all are common. All are insectivores that use echolocation to capture insect prey. Big brown bat's the one you probably see the most. Then we have the eastern small-footed bat, the little brown bat, the northern long-eared bat, the Indiana bat, tricolored bat, eastern red bat, hoary bat, and silver-haired bat. So we have quite a few bats. So of the 9 species of bats in Connecticut, big brown and red bats make up about 96%. So that's the blue there. The other species are less common. This data is based on statewide monitoring of bat populations using acoustic technology. This species composition is what exists in the post-white nose syndrome world. So as you can see, the other smaller bats, but the biggest part of the pie are, as I said, the big brown bat and the red bat. So here they all are, the cuties. There are 2 major types of bats in Connecticut, cave bats and tree bats. Cave bats spend their winter months hibernating in caves and mines, and they're the ones who caught the white nose syndrome. In the summer, they form maternity colonies in tree cavities, old barns, or specially designed bat houses. And I do encourage you to Google bat houses and, you know, find bat houses made by a bat society or Audubon society. And pretty cool to put up a bat house, but you have to follow the directions and point in the right direction. So 5 out of the 6 cave bats in Connecticut are listed as endangered under the Connecticut Endangered Species Act, and 2 are federally listed under the Federal Endangered Species. Status definitions for animals are endangered species, but those would be native species in danger of extirpation. There's that word I taught you that means they exist somewhere else, but they're no longer here. And any species listed in danger. Threatened is a native species that's likely to become endangered. And a species of special concern is a native species having a restricted range or habitat in the state, low population level, or to be in such high demand by man that its unregulated taking would be detrimental to its population. So here's our migratory tree bats. Tree bats roost in trees in the summer and migrate to warmer climates to overwinter there. There's increasing evidence that some red bats may overwinter in Connecticut, which is happening with other bird species. Not that they're a bird, but things are getting warmer and some things are staying around. Like we'll have robins stay all winter. We've had some bluebirds that'll stay around. So here's a mammal that's staying around. So red bats are the most common of the three tree bats in Connecticut, and they're listed as special concern here. So here's the little brown and the big brown bat. Hard to tell much difference. The little brown bat and the big brown bat have been the two most common bats in Connecticut, with the red joining them now. Their forelegs and hands of bats have become wings. Their wing membrane stretch between those fingers. The thumb exists as a little claw at the end of the forearm, and they use this claw to climb and crawl when not in flight. Again, they roost by hanging upside down from their rear foot claws. The little brown bat weighs 1/8 to 1/2 of an ounce. So imagine that, really small. Their body's 2 to 4 inches long. Wingspan can be 9 to 11 inches. So they look pretty funny flying, with those big wings. The big brown bat weighs 1/2 ounce or a little more. Their body can be 6 to 7 inches and their wingspan 12 to 16 inches. Both of these bats do range through most of the continental US and into southern Canada. They can live in woods, farm fields, cities, your attic. Most often are found in Connecticut roosting in houses, so up in somebody's attic. The brown bats are nocturnal, like all North American bats. They're active during the spring, summer, and fall. They hibernate in the winter. They roost in a dark, warm place, such as an attic, hollow tree, or cave. For both of these species, the males tend to roost solo or in small groups during the summer months, but the females will gather in communal nursery roosts with their pups. And then they do hibernate in similar spaces as the males during the winter. And they do hibernate in clusters. Both of these bats are insectivores, but these bats don't eat as many mosquitoes as some of the other bats. They eat a lot of beetles, moths, and many harmful garden pests. The insects will be caught in the bat's mouth or sometimes scooped up with the tail membrane. Bats, like a lot of animals that hibernate or go into torpor, have to build up enough fat to survive winter hibernation. The female doesn't ovulate during the winter, so fertilization of the egg doesn't occur until they come out of hibernation in the spring. Their young are born in June or July. The little brown bats can fly about 22 miles per hour, and the big brown bats 40. Again, these animals are not without sight. They can see. So bats are mammals, and as I said, Chiroptera is their order. They have the skeletal structure more similar to humans and birds. Again, Chiroptera means hand wing. They're the only mammal capable of self-powered flight. No, the southern and northern flying squirrels don't fly, they glide. So again, their skin does stretch between their fingers and bones to the wings, and the tail membrane connects and the hind legs help them steer and capture insects. So again, what bats are not, they're not blind. They have normal daylight vision and use echolocation to navigate in darkness. They do have a really good hearing. Well, look at those ears in the top left. I would think that'd be pretty good hearing. They're not mice, even though the German word for bat is Fledermaus, which is a famous opera, flying mouse. Bats are not rodents. So they don't get tangled in your hair. Now, when I grew up in Texas, women wore pretty big hair, kind of like Dolly Parton. Maybe they could get hung up in that, but generally speaking, don't worry. They're agile flyers. They don't have any trouble avoiding obstacles, including your head. Again, they're not all rabid. Rabies is a viral disease. It affects mammals, including skunks, raccoons, dogs, cats, bats. They have a relatively low incidence of rabies to their population, but precautions still should be taken. So I'm going to let you hear a few sounds. Listen carefully. This is a large group of bats. You're flying and you can hear them making little chirpy noises. Hold on. Where'd it go? Okay, and here's bats chattering. Now that's highly magnified, but you could possibly hear it at night if you're sitting out waiting for the comets to fly or the meteors. Here's bats squeaking while they fly overhead. And then here's just a large group of bats flying overhead. So pretty cool. And I have heard some of these sounds outside, so just sit quietly, maybe you will, and keep your motion lights off. Oh, wait, okay, time has changed. Anyway, so a little bit about echolocation. Again, besides good looking and having amazing anatomical adaptations, another reason I think they're cool is that they can navigate in complete darkness. It also enables them to capture and feed on these night flying insects. So ultrasonic sound bounces off of something like the insect, bounces back and helps them listen and get the returning echoes, help them form a mental image of their surroundings. It's very effective for them to find these insects in the darkness. So ecology, economy, and environment. Again, they're worth over $3 billion to U.S. agriculture and forestry. Unfortunately, as we're trying to find more green energy, all those wind turbines everywhere are killing millions and millions and millions, untold millions of birds and bats and bald eagles every year. The companies have been given a pass until the 30s for being fined for killing bald eagles, but they have been tasked with the government to find safer ways to use those wind turbines. Insectivores keep insects in check while reducing pesticide use, we hope. I always tell people, you know what? I never put any fertilizer at all in my yard. And yeah, it might have some weeds, but it's green. It's really green right now. And yeah, it'll get a few dandelions and other little flowers, but things like to eat those things. Anyway, nectar feeders, they pollinate agave, as I said. They're fruit eaters, so they're important for food dispersal. So they can eat about an average of 1,000 insects per night, which is pretty incredible. So guano happens. It does form the nutrient foundation of cave ecology, which supports all kinds of life forms, but it also is prized as a valuable fertilizer by gardeners. It has a very crumbly texture. This is what it typically can look like in your attic. It breaks down into shiny little insect parts when it's crushed. So if you tell your kids that, they're going to want to go up to the attic and find those little insect parts. Again, they are extremely useful as they have high nitrogen content. So if you mix it with compost, it's the best way to use as a soil enhancement for your garden. The seasons of a bat life, they enter hibernation in October, so earlier than a lot of animals. They emerge in mid-April. They raise their pups in June and July. Migration to hibernation sites begins again in September. The seasonal timing varies among species. It can be influenced by the weather, as we've seen weather affecting a lot of our animals. But this is the typical, and I'm not sure anything's typical anymore because the weather, 96 degrees last week was crazy. Anyway, why are they in trouble? The white nose syndrome, the acronym WNS. We've talked about really how interesting and important bats are, but they are in trouble. The white nose syndrome is a disease that affects hibernating bats. It was first discovered near Albany in 2006, 2007, and caused widespread mortality. It's a fungal disease caused by a fungus that's longer than the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, but its acronym is capital P, small d. The infection causes cave bats to awaken frequently during hibernation, which causes them to deplete their stored body fat. And in the winter, they'll emerge in winter and find nothing to eat, even though they're awake, obviously. In 2012, the government had noticed that nearly 6 million bats had died because of white nose syndrome only in the Northeast. I mean, it died elsewhere, but here in the Northwest, so a lot of deaths attributed to that. White nose syndrome, there's that word. You can see it long, kind of split up. But you can see when it was discovered in 2006, 2007, and it's gone down a little bit, luckily. The social nature of cave bats and their penchant for cold, humid, wintering roosts make them very vulnerable to WNS. That fungus does thrive in dark, cold, damp environments and infects cave bats, as I said, during hibernation when their metabolism and immune systems are suppressed. It's visible on infected bats as a white growth on their muzzle and skin. It causes them, as I said, to awaken more frequently, and that makes them burn off more fat preserves. Infected bats seek to replenish these reserves in winter, and they will die from exposure and starvation. So it's been pretty bad. In Connecticut, all but one of the 6 cave bat species are on the state's list of special concern, threatened, and endangered. So it is a threat even to our bats. So again, it's a cold-loving fungus that thrives in humid cave environments. You can see the white on the noses there and on the wings. It's spread from bat to bat, from soil to bat. And if people are in caves disrupting things in the winter, it can be caused there too. It doesn't affect people, but we can unknowingly transfer spores from sites like from clothing, shoes, and gears, kind of like be sure and wipe off your kayak, your boat when you go from one body of water to another. You can spread stuff. We think it was introduced to North America from Europe or Asia by humans. It is endemic in Europe and Asia, but it does not produce disease symptoms in bats. So interestingly enough, it does here. Because our bats have had no previous exposure, they have no immunity to the infection. So what does it mean for Connecticut bats? The big brown bats suffered an approximate 50% decline, and populations of the little brown tricolored and northern long-eared bat dropped by 95% or more. Quite incredible. Former common species are now rare and could face extinction. So also low reproductive. So this is hard to see, but state wildlife agencies have documented and reported to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service white nose syndrome. So you can see it is kind of spread throughout. This is an interactive map, but I never can get it to interact. So anyway, it has been more prominent in the Northeast and in northern provinces of Canada. So again, the long-eared bat, which is, one of our more common species, has been threatened in all these places. You can see the dark purplish color, or whatever, mauve, or whatever you want to call it, is counties, districts that have infected Hibercula, and in the orange, it has been found in the orange counties, but not as much infection. So pretty sad. So the northern long-eared bat, which used to be very common, was added to the list of threatened species in 2015 because of the white nose syndrome. So there is a lot of research going on, and there's a lot of research being done. If you want to find out more information, just Google WNS research and you'll find a lot of it. Conservation status of bats: 21 bat species are critically endangered, which means they face imminent risk of extinction. 83 bat species are endangered. 109 are considered vulnerable, and 242 bat species are considered data deficient, almost like the bumblebee bat, We just don't have enough information. Bat conservation in Connecticut, our biologists work very, very hard at monitoring populations, helping contribute to the health. They do counts of maternity colonies, hibernaculum surveys, acoustic surveys. They go around with these speakers that send out these sounds, and then they can hear. They try to gate up caves, put out a lot of bat houses in a lot of Connecticut parks and forests. You will see bat houses. They will give technical assistance if you call in. So they are trying to keep up with things. Bat population monitoring, they get these little sounds. Here's some sounds here. So the peeping's the bat, and that other noise is the acoustic thing that they're recording these sounds with. You can see the biologist in the truck there monitoring this. So they're very happy when they go to different areas that maybe where bats have not been seen as much, and they find these noises. They're very happy to hear them. To us, it all sounds the same, but I guarantee to you they don't. It doesn't. Sometimes you'll also get other critters in there. Anyway, this acoustic technology does allow the biologists to monitor the bat populations using a hands-off approach and not invading into their spaces. The bat's echolocation calls are above the range of the human ear, so these special bat detectors are needed to listen and record their vocalizations. Then they can do a bat call analysis software that helps identify the different species foraging at night. Okay, it never wants to change to the next slide. There we go. How to get involved. You can come to Bat Appreciation Day, and I do encourage that, even though you're in Danbury, it's not that far. It's in the Granby area, Old Newgate Prison, pretty cool. It's a day in September. You can learn about bats. There's all kinds of stuff to learn. The bat biologists there. It's a lot of fun for kids and adults too. Like I said, you can Google and get properly designed bat houses, and that really helps support maternity colonies in the summer. This is true for all birds. You know, all of us, even me, we have motion lights, you know, security cams. And security cams work without your light, maybe just not as good. But all of the lighting that we have at night is affecting migrating birds. It's affecting bats. It's affecting everything. So if you're not really afraid, you know, try to reduce your light usage. It really does help. Got bats, you can report maternity colonies to the Wildlife Division. You can send them to that email, or you can Google CTDEEP online and go to the website and just type in bats, and it'll give you all the contact information. So very interesting to be involved. Here's Old Newgate Prison and Bat Appreciation Day. This was kind of right near setup, so there were more people there, but they were just kind of getting everything set up at the time. Again, it's held in December. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. But I want to read this verse by Aesop. You know me, I like to have literature. A beast he would be, or a bird, as might suit thought the bat, but he erred. When the battle was done, he found that no one would take him for friend at his word. So poor little bat. So